Revealed, the incredible metal she hid for 12 years on the carrier that transformed everything. Sarah felt a rush of excitement as she pulled the dusty lid off the old box in the attic. There it was, gleaming in the dim light, a military medal she thought lost forever. It belonged to her father, a man who faced enemy fire with bravery. Treasures like this represented more than just honor, they embodied deep sacrifices. As tears pricked at her eyelids, she remembered the stories he told, the proud look on his face when he recounted his adventures, the way he would hug her close when the memories became too painful. This discovery was not just a medal, it was a symbol of her father's valor that had been tucked away, hidden from her and the world. The salty breeze wafted through the open attic window, gathering scents of the fried food from the diner where Sarah worked long shifts to support her 2 young children, Emma and Liam. Since her husband was deployed with the Navy, every day felt like a struggle, juggling bills and parenting all alone. Yet finding the medal ignited a fire in her. It reminded her of the legacy of sacrifice she wanted to honor, one that resonated deeply in their coastal town of Crescent Bay, where the streets buzzed with stories of brave veterans. She couldn't shake off the thought of selling the medal to fund her children's education. It felt like the simplest solution. Yet, the moment she voiced it at the diner, the ambience turned tense. The regulars murmured and debated, half of them supportive, and half appalled. The sense of community was tangible, but so too was the lingering edge of resentment. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As the days passed, Sarah wrestled with the town's mixed reactions. The community meeting loomed ahead, each hour ticking away until she'd have to share her family's story. On the night of the meeting, her heart raced. Would they listen? Would they understand? As she took a deep breath, she could see faces filled with anticipation, eyes glued to her in expectation. I found this medal, she began, her voice trembling. But it's not just a piece of metal, it carries years of struggles, not just my father's but all the veterans' families, like mine. A heavy silence fell, the weight of her words hanging in the air. Sarah's chest tightened as she recounted her father's sacrifices, the struggles she faced raising children with little help. Vulnerable, she revealed how the town honored the soldiers, yet ignored their families. The crowd's expressions shifted, understanding lingering in the air, and then, a neighbor stood up, frowning. Is it really a treasure, or just a reminder of everything we've lost? The question struck her like a blow. Doubt rushed in like an unwelcome tide, leaving her wondering if she was being selfish. Would this honor her father or betray his legacy? As the room filled with murmurs, Sarah stood at a crossroads. She could feel the eyes of the community upon her, uncertain of what her goal truly was. Would she let their opinions steer her family's future? Or dig deeper, finding strength to carve out a new legacy, even in the face of doubt? The tension hung heavy, waiting to be resolved, and that decision, that fragile moment, was just the beginning. The room buzzed with uneasy energy, like an electric storm poised to break. Sarah felt the heat of countless eyes, each one a question mark in her heart. She steadied herself, looking deep into the faces of her neighbors. They were familiar yet distant, their expressions a tapestry of support and disbelief. I know this medal represents pain, she continued, forcing her voice to stay steady. Pain that my father endured and pain that we all carry. But it's also a bridge between what they fought for and what we live for now. A senior man in the back crossed his arms and shook his head. It's easy to say that sitting here, Sarah. But you're talking about selling a piece of history, a part of your family. What will that teach your kids? There it was, the heart of her turmoil laid bare. What was she really trying to teach Emma and Liam? That sacrifices could be reduced to dollar signs? The thought pierced her, but another voice rose to counter the doubt. What if it could also be a lesson in courage? A soft voice piped up from the right. It was Mary, a widow who lived 2 blocks down, her husband a decorated veteran. Courage isn't just on the battlefield. Sometimes, it takes courage to face your own fears to seek a future. A wave of murmurs washed over the room, a blend of understanding and dissent. Sarah's heart swelled as she sensed a shift, that tangible connection threading itself through the crowd. Was it enough to let them know the truth? Mary's right, Sarah said, her voice rising. It's not merely about the medal or money. It's about keeping our veterans alive in our memories, while also carving a path for our children's future. She took a deep breath, the air thick but charged with empathy. If I sell this medal, I promise it'll go directly toward their education, or we'll create a scholarship for other children in our community. We can honor the past while investing in the future. A collective intake of breath echoed, and she watched expressions shift from suspicion to curiosity. There was a chance she could weave together her father's legacy with new possibilities, but as she finished, the tension didn't dissolve. What if someone else sees that medal as their ticket to gold? Another neighbor countered. What makes your pain more valuable than anyone else's? Each question struck her like arrows, targeting her vulnerabilities. This was bigger than just her family, this was a raw nerve of grief, sacrifice, and community identity. Her own worries started to simmer next to that of others. Could her desire to provide for her children really be justified at the cost of their shared history? Suddenly, her youngest, Emma, who had been silent, squeezed her hand. "Mommy," she said, her big brown eyes glistening with innocence, "can't we just keep it? Just like Daddy said?" Sarah's heart broke a little more. She didn't want her children to be burdened by adult choices. "You're right, sweetheart. It's ours just like the memories we hold." A moment of reflection settled over everyone. Sarah could see thoughtful brows furrowed and jaws clenched in contemplation. It was clear they were grappling with a question far deeper than mere ownership. A question of belonging, sacrifice, and the future of their hometown. With a softening of tension, a voice broke through once more. "What do you really want to do, Sarah?" It was Joel, a veteran who had come home to rebuild a life without the brother he had lost. His voice was steady, whispering courage back into the moment. "I want to honor my father and all the dreams he had for me," she replied, her eyes shining fiercely. The crowd seemed to lean in, as if waiting for the turning point. Would she boldly step forward into the unknown? Or grasp the familiar past? This moment felt pivotal, a chance to redefine everything. But just then, the door creaked open, and the sound of heavy boots echoed through the room. Sarah's heart leaped in a mixture of dread and hope because she recognized those footsteps. Was it too late for a decision? Would the arrival of her husband change everything? The air crackled with anticipation. The door swung open fully, and Mark stepped into the room, his uniform still crisp from the day's responsibilities. The moment his eyes met Sarah's, the atmosphere shifted. A mix of confusion and urgency washed over him as he scanned the faces of their neighbors, the tension palpable. He sensed immediately that something significant was unfolding. "Sarah?" he asked, his voice steady though a hint of concern crept into his tone. "What is going on?" The way he approached her, determined yet cautious, made her heart race. This was precisely the moment she had both anticipated and dreaded. Before she could speak, several voices chimed in unison, each echoing their doubts and worries. "She wants to sell the medal." One voice blurted out from the back. Mark's expression fell, and his frown deepened as he turned toward her, searching for answers in her eyes. "Is that true?" he pressed, taking a step closer, his gaze shifting from her to the medal tucked neatly in her pocket. The weight of the decision hung heavily between them. Sarah felt the walls of the room close in, the collective judgment of their community wrapped around her like a thick fog. "We were just discussing," she began, but her voice faltered under his scrutiny. All these months of secrecy, all the late-night conversations with Emma and Liam about their future, all of it bubbled up inside her, demanding release. Talking about selling a piece of Dad's legacy? Mark's brow furrowed in disbelief. You're talking about your father's pain and sacrifice, Sarah. How can you even consider that? His words felt like a punch to her stomach. It wasn't just about the medal, it was about them, the crumbling foundation of their shared ideals in a world that felt increasingly uncertain. Because we need to think about the future, she blurted out, the urgency of her words surprising even herself. She could feel the room holding its breath, hanging on her every syllable. The kids, Emma and Liam. Their education, their future. This could help. Mark interrupted her, his voice tinged with desperation. But at what cost? This isn't just a relic, it's a symbol of everything your father stood for. An uncomfortable silence fell. Everyone in the room, from her supportive friends to her skeptical neighbors, took the moment to ponder their own thoughts. Conversations hung just above whispers, each person wrestling with their own views about sacrifice, legacy, and family. Emma looked up at her mother and father, her small face reflecting the weight of the moment. Can't we keep it? She asked again, her innocence cutting through the tension like a knife. Like Daddy said? Mark's expression softened into something almost vulnerable. He knelt before Emma, taking her tiny hands in his. Sweetheart, this medal means a lot to us, to your grandpa. But his voice trailed off, uncertainty clouding his gaze. The moment felt interminable, time stretching as Sarah could almost hear each heartbeat. Each beat echoed questions she feared to confront. What did legacy really mean? How could she honor her father and still dream of a different future for her children? As her heart battled the desire to protect their past with the need to push toward a better tomorrow, Sarah realized it was not only a question for her, it was a question for them all. If they sought to move forward, how could they also respect the sacrifices made in the past? Sarah, Joel finally broke the silence again, his voice leisurely returning to the forefront. What if you don't have to choose just one? How can we honor the past while reaching for the future? The air shifted slightly, the community seemed to lean in, anchoring to its core. Sarah's mind raced through the implications of those words. Perhaps there was a way. But she had to believe in that vision, even as the challenges loomed. The door creaked open a little more, and someone else stepped into view. Their neighbor, Mrs. Henderson, who had always seemed so aloof, now looked fierce, determination blazing in her eyes. Before you make a final decision, you need to hear what I have to say, she spoke, her voice firm yet inviting. Mark straightened up, curiosity mingling with dread. Sarah felt her heart race again. What was it that Mrs. Henderson had to reveal? And would it change everything in the room, yet again? Mrs. Henderson stepped further into the room, the sharpness of her gaze commanding attention. The whispers that had danced among the neighbors quieted into a heavy stillness. Mark straightened, his hand still gently holding Emma's. What is it, Mrs. Henderson? Sarah's voice was soft, almost pleading as she took a tentative step forward. The weight of her emotions pressed against her ribcage, and she could see curiosity mirrored on the faces of her friends and neighbors. For a moment, Mrs. Henderson hesitated. She looked around, gauging the reactions of those gathered. Then, with a deep breath, she began, her tone steady and almost reverent. You remember when your father was honored those many years ago, don't you? A few nods indicated acknowledgement, but Sarah felt a tightening in her chest. Memories of her father's pride and bravery came rushing back. It felt like another lifetime. I want to tell you about the real story behind that medal, she continued, a fire igniting in her eyes. There's more to it than anyone knows. Your father didn't just receive it for fighting bravely, it was earned through a choice he made that day, a sacrifice that changed lives. Mark's expression shifted from anxiety to intrigue, and Sarah felt hope pricking at her heart. Could the meaning behind the medal be different than they thought? Could it honor both the past and the future? Mrs. Henderson gathered herself, her voice steady. 12 years ago, your father found himself in a desperate situation. When the mission fell apart, there were other lives at stake. Instead of saving himself, he chose to stay behind to make sure his team got out alive. Her eyes clouded for a brief moment. He risked everything, and in the end, it was that sacrifice that defined his legacy. The air was electric. Each person absorbed the gravity of her words, the weight of her story wrapping around them like a warm blanket. Sarah's eyes met Emma's, and she could see confusion mingled with a flicker of understanding. "What does that mean for us?" Mark asked, shifting from surprise to urgency. "How does this change anything?" "It means this medal holds more value than we could ever fully grasp," Mrs. Henderson replied, her voice growing passionate. "Maybe it's not just about holding on to it. It could be a way to honor your father's choices and the values he stood for: courage, sacrifice, integrity. There's a community out there that remembers him, that knows his story, and maybe, just maybe, sharing that story could help a lot of people." Sarah felt a stirring inside her, a realization that perhaps selling the medal wasn't the only way to secure a future for her children. What if they built something more meaningful instead? Emma looked up at her mother. "Can we help tell Daddy's story?" she asked, her eyes shimmering with possibility. Tears sprang to Sarah's eyes. She felt warmth flooding her heart as she gazed at her daughter, realizing this was about so much more than financial security. This was about honor, resilience, and connections. Mark, standing close, seemed to align his thoughts with hers. "But can we do that while still facing the future?" he asked, seeking clarity. Mrs. Henderson met their gaze, a knowing smile breaking through her fierce demeanor. "You can. Sharing his legacy can be just as empowering as holding on to the medal. Trust me, there's a path forward." The room buzzed with conversation, ideas sparking like fireworks. Sarah felt a sense of unity begin to unfurl among them, hope shimmering like light through shadows. Yet, lurking beneath this newfound sense of purpose was a question she hadn't voiced: could they truly take on such a responsibility together? "What if we fail?" she finally whispered, unable to banish the doubt. "Then we'll face it as a family," Mark declared, gripping her hand tightly. As the conversation swirled around them, Sarah's heart raced with both fear and excitement. Could they really rise to the occasion? Or would preserving the past ultimately prove too heavy a burden? Mrs. Henderson looked at them, her eyes bright with determination, and Sarah knew what they chose to do next could change everything. "Together, we can find a way," Mrs. Henderson assured, confidence radiating from her. But as they all stood on the precipice of an unknown journey, Sarah couldn't shake the question echoing in her mind: what would be the consequences of that choice? And in that moment, the weight of the decision hung delicately in the air, teetering between hope and fear. The energy in the room was palpable, like a bubbling spring threatening to overflow. As Sarah looked around, the faces of her friends reflected a mix of inspiration and anxiety. This was no longer just about a medal, it was about their community and a story waiting to be retold. "We have to share this," Emma said, her voice ringing clear above the chatter. "Daddy's story deserves to be known." "Does it?" Sarah whispered under her breath, heart pounding. Could her little girl really grasp the weight of what they were discussing? With every fiber of her being, she wanted to protect Emma from disappointment, yet hope flickered in her chest. Mark squeezed her hand tighter. "If we do this, we need a plan," he said, pulling them back to the moment. "We can organize something, maybe like a memorial? A gathering where everyone can share their stories? We could do that together." "Exactly." Mrs. Henderson's enthusiasm sparked in the depths of her eyes. "Storytelling is powerful. If there are people out there who knew your father, their memories could breathe life into his sacrifice in ways we can't imagine." An idea formed in Sarah's mind, one that seemed to melt away her fears. "What if we create a community project? We could ask everyone to contribute pictures, memories, even letters. We could help others see what kind of man their hero was." The room fell silent for a moment, letting Sarah's vision sink in. It seemed daunting, like climbing a mountain, but she felt an itch of excitement at the thought. You'd really do that? Emma asked, wide-eyed. You'd tell everyone about Daddy? A lump formed in Sarah's throat. She nodded, swallowing hard. Yes, sweetheart. We'll tell his story. Together. Cheers erupted from the crowd, hopeful and shaky. Mark stood taller, fueled by the enthusiasm radiating from Sarah and Emma. All right then. Let us set a date this week to meet again, reach out to people who knew him, let us make this a celebration of his life. In the midst of the planning, a new wave of anxiety bubbled up inside Sarah. What if they exposed parts of her father's life that were better left in the shadows? Was she truly ready to share those details, the intimate truths of sacrifice and dedication? What if it brings up pain for some people? She asked quietly. It could, Mrs. Henderson said softly, placing a hand on her shoulder. But pain is often a part of healing. Remember, he made a choice that day, and that choice affects all of us still. Honoring him means embracing every part of his story. The word struck Sarah hard. Mrs. Henderson's wisdom cleared the fog of her doubt. Suddenly she envisioned the faces of those who would come, friends, neighbors, maybe even veterans. Each would add depth to the story she sought to share. Could they truly turn this pivotal moment into something meaningful for everyone? A chorus of voices broke through her thoughts, each person sharing their excitement for the project. Plans and ideas flew around like confetti, each one a little spark igniting a growing flame of purpose. Let us meet on Thursday evening, Mark said, raising his voice to be heard. We'll make a list of everyone we want to reach out to. We can start a social media page, gather contributions, let us make this official. The thought of social media sent a shiver down Sarah's spine. They would be seeking out not only memories but also opinions, feelings, and stories both joyous and tragic. Could she really let go of the fear tied to that? As the walls closed in with the reality of their task ahead, the weight of uncertainty loomed large. That night, as she tucked Emma into bed, Sarah brushed the hair from her daughter's forehead. This will be important for our family, she whispered. But it won't be easy. I know, Mom, Emma replied, eyes shining with a mixture of joy and maturity. But nothing great ever is, right? Sarah smiled through the unease, recognizing her daughter's resilience. Emma was so much like her father. As she turned off the light, leaving a small glow from the nightstand, Sarah wondered what consequences their choices would bring. They were embarking on a journey that could change everything. And deep in her heart, she knew, opening that door meant embracing whatever awaited them on the other side. Could they brave the truth that lay within? And once the story started spilling out, could they ever turn back? The meeting on Thursday arrived faster than Sarah expected. The air in the community center buzzed with a mix of excitement and nerves. She took a moment before stepping inside, drawing in a deep breath. The familiar sound of chatter filled the hall, just like it always had at the neighborhood events. But this time, it felt different, charged with something sacred. As she entered, she spotted Emma, her eyes bright, rushing to greet her. Look, Mom. Everyone is here. The child's enthusiasm washed over Sarah, soothing some of her apprehensions. Mark was already at a table, a whiteboard propped up beside him. Underneath the heading, Project Hero, he had written a list of names that was about to grow. Sarah felt a warmth in her chest. This moment was no longer just hers. It belonged to every person who loved and admired her father. Hey, Sarah. Mark called out, waving her over. We're just starting to brainstorm how to gather stories. I think we should divide into small groups to reach out to folks who knew your dad. The energy of the room seemed infectious, as Sarah watched people organize. Friends grouped together, throwing out ideas and offers to help. A few shared tales of their encounters with her father, laughter mixing with poignant moments like the time he rescued a stray dog during a storm. From the back, Mrs. Henderson raised her hand, her voice breaking through the buzz. Let us remember to include any letters or pictures we might find in the old archives or talk to the veterans who served with him. They're a treasure trove of memories. Sarah nodded, feeling a sense of belonging. In this room, every heart beat with shared purpose. But as they fleshed out their plans, a feeling of dread twisted in her stomach. Just how much should they dig into the past? What if hidden truths shone through the bright memories? Can we talk about the tough stuff? Sarah's voice trembled slightly as she spoke. I worry that not everyone's ready to hear everything. Some stories, they might be too painful. The room fell silent for a moment. Sarah could feel their gazes, each person holding on to her words. Mark nodded, understandingly. We can be sensitive about what we choose to share. It's all about honoring him while being real. Someone chimed in from the back. Truth is, we need to acknowledge both the good and the hard. That's what makes him human, right? Sarah swallowed hard. That was true. Her father was not just a hero, he was a man. If they were going to tell his story, they had to honor every facet of it. As names started filling the list on the board, Sarah felt a swell of determination. Each name had a connection, stories waiting to be unveiled, laughter to share, tears to shed. As they wrapped up the meeting, Mark looked around. I'm proud of all of you for wanting to do this. This is more than a project, it's a tribute to a life well lived. Together, we'll make sure he's remembered. Sarah's heart raced. It wasn't just about her father anymore. It was about community, resilience, and truth. What had begun as a simple idea had turned into an intricate tapestry woven with shared pain and joy. Once they finished, Sarah lingered, watching people mobilize. Outside, the sun cast warm rays against the fading sky. She received a text from an old family friend, an unexpected message. I have something important to share about your dad. Can we meet? Her pulse quickened. What could this be? She thought, the door had opened a crack, and she knew something awaited her in the shadows beyond. A sudden wave of curiosity and fear rushed through her. Would this be the revelation that could change everything? What secrets and truths lay in wait, ready to be uncovered? As Sarah stepped outside, the brisk evening air hit her face, grounding her in the present moment. She glanced at her phone, her heart thumping against her ribcage as she considered the text. The familiar patterns of her neighborhood faded away in her mind, overshadowed by the looming anticipation of what lay ahead. Mom! Can we go to the playground? Emma's voice melted through her thoughts. The innocence of her daughter's request was a welcome distraction. Sarah smiled softly and nodded, trying to push away the urgency of the message. Let us go, pumpkin. They walked together toward the park, but Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that her world was about to shift again. Emma skipped ahead, her laughter ringing like tiny bells in the evening. At the playground, while Emma climbed and swung, Sarah tried to focus on the laughter of the children and the soft rustle of leaves. But her mind was elsewhere. Who was the family friend? What did they know? A nagging feeling pulled at her. It wasn't just about gathering memories anymore, this was about unraveling deeper layers of her father's life and perhaps her own. As she helped Emma navigate the jungle gym, Sarah's thoughts drifted back to the meeting. The moments shared, the stories exchanged, did they honestly reflect the man her father was? Or were they polishing a legacy that didn't tell the whole truth? She shook her head, frustration bubbling up. She hated the unknown. Mom, look! Emma called, startling Sarah out of her spiral. The girl had managed to get to the top of the slide, arms triumphantly raised. I'm a superhero just like Grandpa. The joy in her daughter's face tugged at Sarah's heart. You sure are, sweetheart. But it brought a bittersweet pang. A hero, yes, but a flawed one as well. As darkness crept in, Sarah finally made the decision. After some gentle prodding from Emma, they headed home. Just as they arrived, her phone vibrated again. It was the same number, the family friends. Please, call me. It's important. With a deep breath, she clicked the button. The phone rang once, twice, and then a familiar voice broke through. "Sarah, it's me, Alan. I hope I'm not interrupting anything, but I really need to speak with you. I found something about your father. Something he never told you." Sarah's stomach twisted. "What do you mean? What did you find?" Alan hesitated, and Sarah could feel the weight of the silence across the line. "There's a medal, Sarah, a medal he earned but never mentioned. It was kept hidden for a reason." A chill ran down Sarah's spine. "Hidden? Why?" "That's what we need to discuss in person. Can you meet tomorrow?" "Yes," she whispered, a sense of dread and anticipation mounting. What lay ahead? Secrets, a hidden past, or perhaps some piece of her father she had never known? As she ended the call, fear mingled with exhilaration. Tomorrow would bring answers, but also choices. Would she want to uncover the truth, no matter how painful? The night stretched out around her, filled with possibilities and uncertainties. She glanced out the window, the stars bright in the sky, a reminder that even in the darkest moments, there were lights guiding the way. And yet, she knew the journey was just beginning. What had her father concealed beneath that heroic facade? As the question lingered in her mind, she couldn't shake the feeling that they were on the brink of uncovering something monumental. Would she be ready for whatever lay beneath the surface of the life she thought she knew? The next morning, Sarah woke with a heavy heart. A soft light poured through the curtains, illuminating the room, but for her, it felt dimmer. The anticipation clawed at her, merging with a knot of dread in her stomach. She glanced at the clock. Too early still. The thought of delaying the inevitable felt like an escape, but she knew it was just that, a thought. Emma bounced into the room, a whirlwind of energy. "Mom! Can we get pancakes?" The girl's bright smile broke through Sarah's murky feelings like sunshine piercing the clouds. "Absolutely, let us do it." They whipped up pancakes together, the kitchen filling with the aroma of buttery goodness. Sarah poured maple syrup over their stacks as Emma giggled, racing to see who could stack the highest. For a moment, she lost herself in the warmth of their shared laughter. This was the life that mattered most, she thought, as she watched her daughter's eyes shine. But thoughts of Alan crept back in like shadows at dusk. The medal loomed large in her mind, its significance gnawing at her curiosity. She needed to prepare herself before their meeting. What if her father's secrets shattered the image she had of him? After breakfast, the two set off for the park again. It was harder to witness Emma's joy against the backdrop of her own emotional storm. The familiar playground now felt like a stage set for a play she hadn't signed up for. "Mom, can you push me?" Emma chirped, breaking Sarah's musing. With each push, Sarah tried to align her thoughts. She wanted to be fully present for Emma. Yet, memories of her father danced like specters in her mind. The stories he told, the laughter they shared. What if behind it all lay unspoken truths? Time slipped by, and before long, it was nearly time to meet Alan. Her heart raced as she drove to the cafe, each traffic light feeling like it was deliberately stalling her inevitable fate. When she stepped inside, the comforting scent of fresh coffee welcomed her, even as a cold fist grasped at her heart. Alan waved from a small table in the corner, his expression filled with concern. She approached him, trying to mask her anxiety with a smile. "Hey," she said, sliding into the chair across from him. "Thanks for coming." His voice was calm, yet she could tell he was holding something back. "Just tell me. What's this about the medal?" She pressed, impatience bubbling beneath her surface. That he took a deep breath, meeting her gaze with sincerity. "Your father earned that medal in extraordinary circumstances. It was awarded for bravery during a mission. But, it wasn't just a moment of heroism. It was connected to something much darker." "Darker? How?" Alan leaned in closer, lowering his voice. "There were decisions made, Sarah. Choices that affected lives. Your father was involved in more than he ever let on. Fear tightened its grip around her. What kind of choices? Why would he hide this? Because sometimes, the truth isn't easy to live with. He may have wanted to protect you from it. The weight of his words settled in, heavy and foreboding. It occurred to her that perhaps she hadn't been the only one sheltered from the truth all these years. Was he trying to be a hero, or was he trying to hide a monster? She murmured, her heart racing. Alan's eyes glimmered with understanding. That's what we need to uncover together. The metal is just the tip of the iceberg. There is more to this story, Sarah, much more. Her mind spun with possibilities. Was her father's past filled with glory or guilt? Are you ready to find out what else lies beneath the surface? He asked, his gaze steady. Sarah's breath hitched, the journey ahead now clear but daunting. Would she find peace, or would the truth unravel the fabric of her memories? And as she nodded, a strange mix of fear and resolve swirled within her. She was about to step into a world filled with uncertainty, yet there was no turning back now. It was time to confront the shadows that lingered in the corners of her heart. What else had her father kept hidden, waiting for this very moment to emerge? Sarah's heart pounded in her chest as Alan's words sank in. She could feel a tidal wave of emotions crashing over her: fear, curiosity, a flicker of anger. What kind of secrets had her father buried so deep that even after all these years, they weren't just memories but potential monsters waiting to crawl out of the dark? So, what do we do now? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. They were sitting in the corner of the cafe, yet it felt like the walls were closing in. Alan leaned back, his expression serious. We start by finding out everything we can about that mission. The metal may lead us to records, conversations, even people who were involved. There's an archive center downtown we can check. Right, she replied, the term archives feeling heavy in her mouth. As mundane as it sounded, it represented a door into the unknown, and a path to a truth she both craved and feared. Are you sure this is what you want? He asked, searching her face as if seeking permission from an unsteady captain about to command a ship into a storm. I have to know, she declared, setting her jaw. If my father was hiding things, I need to understand why. For me, for Emma. I can't let those shadows rule my life anymore. Alan nodded slightly, respect flashing in his eyes. Okay then, let us go find the light. The drive to the archive seemed like an eternity, every passing mile pulling her closer to the revelations she feared. Sarah's mind raced, envisioning a battle between the man she had known and the figure Alan had just hinted at. Would she discover a war hero or someone who simply turned his back on his demons? Arriving at the stark, gray building, Sarah hesitated at the entrance. What if I find something that changes everything? What if I can't deal with it? Then you won't be alone. We'll go through it together. Alan's assurance wrapped around her, but it couldn't quell the uncertainty bubbling beneath her surface. The inside smelled musty, filled with rows of shelves holding decades of dust and forgotten stories. As they made their way to the record section, Sarah felt like she was stepping onto hallowed ground, a place where her father's truth lay dormant, waiting to be unearthed. They approached a small desk cluttered with file folders and a computer. An elderly woman looked up, her kind yet tired eyes flicking between them. What can I help you with? Sarah took a deep breath. We're looking for records related to a soldier who earned a bravery medal, from a specific mission. My father, Jacob Lewis. The woman nodded, her fingers dancing over the keyboard. Sarah's heart raced as the sound of typing filled the silence. She could almost hear the echoes of her past, the stories spun around family tables. I see a few listings here, the woman said, extracting a file and tossing it onto the desk. This might be what you are looking for. The file looked mundane, yet it felt like everything hung in the balance as Sarah opened it. Pages filled with official reports, names, and locations unfolded before her. But one line caught her eye, the ink stark against the aging paper subject involved in unapproved military operation. Wait, she breathed, her fingers trembling over the page as she scanned further. What does this mean? Alan leaned in, his brows furrowing. What did your father get involved in? Panic surged through her. Was there a line her father had crossed? Had he betrayed the very values he instilled in her? The woman at the desk seemed to sense their tension. There are more records if you want to dig deeper. Just follow the leads. Sarah looked at Alan, the weight of their quest sinking in. Could she handle more truths? As they pieced together entries, the shadows of her father's choices began to stretch long and ominous. What lay beneath the surface felt like an abyss, ready to swallow her whole. Are you okay? Alan asked softly, concern etched on his face. I don't know, Sarah said, swallowing down the fear pooling in her throat. What if this leads to something I can't come back from? He took her hand, grounding her in that moment. We'll face it together, no matter what the truth is. And at that moment, with the haunting echoes of her father's past crashing over her like waves, Sarah knew a reckoning was coming. What would they uncover next, and how would it reshape everything she thought she knew? The air in the archives felt stale but charged, as if the weight of untouched history pressed against them. Each file they opened revealed another piece of a puzzle Sarah desperately wished had stayed hidden. Papers fluttered like ghosts, whispering secrets of her father that felt both daunting and sacred. Jacob Lewis, she murmured, her fingers tracing the name repeatedly like it might yield a clearer truth about the man she loved and idolized. A soldier, a hero. But what else? Alan's voice interrupted her thoughts. Look here, he said, pointing to a report detailing the outcomes of the operation: civilian casualties, orders disregarded, a unit brought to the brink of destruction. This doesn't just paint him in a good light. Sarah felt cold dread settle in her gut, the words clawing at her heart. This can't be. I need to understand why he did this, she whispered, her eyes welling with tears. Alan gave her hand a reassuring squeeze. If we piece this together, we can make sense of it, for both you and Emma. Whatever he did, there were reasons that pushed him. Determined now, Sarah pushed through the weight of each discovery. They combed through more documents, reaching out for clarity among the chaos of her father's choices. Names of people who served alongside him began to surface. They now felt like lifelines, whispers of unfinished stories hiding in plain sight. Suddenly, Sarah spotted a familiar name: Captain Reynolds, a man who once visited their home. He and her father had shared laughter over whiskey, the camaraderie bright in memory. We need to talk to him, she declared with renewed energy. He might have seen something important. They spent hours combing through records, building connections until late afternoon sunlight cast long shadows through the windows. With a handful of names and leads in place, a flicker of hope ignited inside her. Perhaps these narratives could help carve a more complete image of her father, one tinted not solely with glory but also with context. The following week, they tracked down Captain Reynolds to a small bar just outside town, his laughter carrying memories of the past. Yet, anxiety wrapped around Sarah. Would he recognize her father's pain? As she stepped inside, the smell of aged wood and spilled drinks enveloped her. The room was filled with laughter from a group of veterans gathered around a poker table. Reynolds looked up from his drink, and recognition flashed in his eyes. Sarah Lewis, right? Your dad was one hell of a man. What brings you here? It's about the medal, Captain. I'm uncovering some truths. I need to understand. Her voice trembled, the heaviness sitting in her throat. Reynolds studied her intently. Your father, he bore burdens no one could know, burdens chosen so you wouldn't have to carry them. He sighed, as if afraid of the floodgates that might break open. He protected you by burying the choices he made, not out of shame, but out of love. Choices? Sarah pressed, her heart racing with each word. What does that mean? His actions were born from a will to save lives, not only his battalion but also innocents caught in the crossfire. He grappled with authority's decisions and followed a path only he felt was right. Her father's struggle unfurled before her, vibrant and messy. He never wanted this to define you. We honored his bravery, but his choices were complex. War can twist even the brightest hero. Tears streamed down Sarah's face as she absorbed this revelation. He carried that burden for us? Reynolds nodded, a solemn understanding gleaming in his eyes. The medal? It wasn't just about valor. It symbolized a man who faced impossible decisions in a world steeped in chaos. He had to live with the consequences of them, knowing full well they would follow you. In that moment, Sarah felt the tightness in her chest release. The burden of worry about her father's legacy lightened, understanding weaving threads of acceptance through her heart. I want to share this, she exclaimed, determination swelling within her. Not to tarnish his memory, but to paint the whole picture to show Emma who he was, beyond the medal. Reynolds offered a warm smile. You're ready to honor him as he should be fully, faithfully. The words poured warmth back into her soul. As they left the bar, the world outside felt brighter. The sky was painted in hues of amber and purple, echoing the sunset of a day where shadows had turned to light. Each step forward felt like stepping into purpose. That evening, Sarah gathered her family at their dining table, Emma and Mark seated before her, the remnants of the day's revelations still swirling in her mind. I have something to share, she began, her voice steady, the words rolling off her tongue with newfound soundness. What is it? Mark asked, observing her closely. It's about Grandpa's medal. And everything behind it. She unfolded the stories shared with her, the complexities, the shadows, and the courage intertwined within. Each word danced in the air, vibrant and alive, breathing connection into her home. Emma's eyes widened as she absorbed it all. So, he wasn't just a hero? No, sweetheart. He was a man of choices, struggles, and great love, Sarah explained, tears threatening to spill again. As she finished, silence enveloped them. Then, I want to know everything about my grandpa, Emma finally murmured, her voice soft yet filled with conviction. Mark took Sarah's hand, his grip warm and reassuring. Together, we'll honor your father by understanding him, holding space for both truth and love. Suddenly, hope flooded the room. They were not just a family shadowed by loss, they were a family prepared to step into the light, dismantling the walls that had once separated them from clarity. Transformation sparked within each heart. What began as a hidden treasure had now become a story shared, a guide to the future, for Emma's education, to celebrate the past, teach resilience, and deep truths. As they joined hands around the table, Sarah felt vibrant threads of legacy weaving tighter with love, each memory enriching both the past and the present. They were ready to embrace not just her father's history, but their own unfolding story, with the weight of the truth trailing behind. Sarah gazed at her little girl, who reminded her so much of the man they were honoring. This is just the beginning, she whispered, and in that moment, family, courage, and hope converged, forging a path illuminated by understanding fueling every step toward a glorious future. Now is the time to embrace this journey fully. So, if you were moved by Sarah's transformation and the powerful legacy of family and truth, don't you dare wait. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive stories. This is the moment to show your support. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm, because your voice matters. And comment below about how you felt during this heartfelt conclusion. We want to hear your thoughts. Finally, share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need that spark of transformation in their lives. They'll thank you later. Don't wait not even one more second to support and uplift this community. You need to be part of this journey.